I couldn't believe it. The video hit me like a ton of bricks. My entire world felt like it was tilting on its axis as I watched my parents and my brother Thomas sitting around our old kitchen table in Phoenix, talking about me like I was some sort of burden. Their voices echoed in my mind, cutting through the warm glow of the Arizona sun that streamed through the windows, the light making it feel like everything they said was a mockery of how my life had unfolded. Lindsay only helps because she owes us. My mother's voice was dripping with contempt. After everything we've done for her, paying the mortgage is the least she can do. And Thomas, oh, Thomas. He smirked as he added, "Yeah, and she acts like she's doing us some huge favor." What a joke. I could hardly stand to look at their faces, especially when my father, who used to be my hero, nodded in agreement, sitting there, allowing them to tear me down. The man who had once taught me how to ride a bike and helped me with my math homework now sat in silence, siding with the people who had never seen me as anything more than a means to an end. I watched it 3 times, each time feeling a strange mix of numbness and clarity. For the past 4 years, I had been making substantial payments on their mortgage through my LLC, Divine Investments. They thought they were paying the bank. They never even bothered to read the fine print of the agreement my financial advisor, Kate, had arranged for me. Every month, they made their small contribution while I covered the rest. More than $200,000 to keep them comfortably in that house. But none of that mattered to them. All they saw was how little I had helped and how ungrateful I had become. I sat at my desk, staring at the spreadsheets that detailed every payment I'd made, the numbers laid out clearly, unarguably. Over $267,000 I had contributed to their mortgage, while they had only paid $52,500. That's when I knew something had to change. My hands were steady, not trembling with anger, but with the calm realization that I had control now. I wasn't going to keep bailing them out anymore. Not when I had been reduced to nothing more than a tool for their convenience. The next message I received was from my Uncle Jason. His words rang out across my thoughts, confirming what I had suspected. "You needed to see this, Lindsay. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. They've been talking like this for months." I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of his words sink in. They had been plotting. It wasn't just a moment of frustration, it was deliberate. My Uncle Jason had always been the only one in the family who truly understood me. He knew exactly what I was going through, and now he was the one to tip me off. I was done playing the good daughter, the responsible one, the silent helper. It was time for them to face the consequences of their actions. I picked up my phone and messaged Jason back. "Thank you for showing me the truth. Don't worry, I won't let them know you sent this. But things are about to change. I'd always been the one to hold the family together. They would never admit it, but they needed me. I was the safety net when the world seemed to fall apart. 4 years ago, when the housing market in Phoenix crashed and my family was on the verge of losing their home, I stepped in. I was 27, successful in my career as a software development manager, despite my family's persistent disapproval of my career choices. They wanted me to take over my father's struggling real estate business. "Software isn't a career for a woman," my mother would often say, her lips pursed in disapproval. My brother, Thomas, was the one they all looked up to. He was the business-minded one, they said. But what they didn't see was that Thomas had nearly bankrupted the family business within 2 years of taking over. Yet, he was still praised. They wanted to maintain the illusion that he was the one with the real business sense, the one who could save them. I'd consulted with Kate, my financial advisor, and together we came up with a plan. We created an LLC, Divine Investments, and I purchased the house through it. The family thought they were still dealing with the bank, but in reality, I was the one keeping them afloat. It worked for a time. They didn't know, and I didn't have to deal with their pride. They maintained their dignity, and I kept them stable. But now, as I watched them tear me down in that video, I realized how wrong I had been to protect them. Their words repeated in my mind over and over. She owes us. What a joke. It wasn't just the betrayal that stung. It was the realization that they had never appreciated the lengths I'd gone to for them. I opened my laptop and logged into the LLC account, feeling strangely detached. The next mortgage payment was due in just 2 weeks. They had always paid their part, but for the first time, I knew exactly what I needed to do. This time, I wasn't going to cover their payments. I wasn't going to bail them out anymore. Let them face the consequences of their choices. I looked at the purchase agreement again. My fingers lingered on the clause Kate had insisted on, including a purchase option clause, just in case something like this happened. I smiled to myself, realizing how long I had been planning this. I was ready for what was to come. I picked up my phone and texted my Uncle Jason. Thank you for showing me the truth. Don't worry, I won't let them know you sent this. But things are about to change. The next few days felt like a countdown. Each moment, each conversation, brought me closer to what I knew I had to do. I could almost hear the ticking of the clock, the moments slipping away, knowing that when the payment was missed, everything would change. The day of the dinner arrived, and with it, the weight of what I was about to do. I drove to their house, my old home, feeling an odd sense of detachment. The familiar scent of my mother's lasagna filled the air, a calculated choice to remind me of the good times we'd shared. But the irony wasn't lost on me. I had already paid more than $5,000 each month for their mortgage, money they had used to live comfortably, all while mocking me behind my back. When I walked in, I was met with my mother's exaggerated hug and my brother's smug grin. It was all so familiar, so predictable. My father, as always, was the silent partner in all of this, watching from the sidelines. Before dinner, my mother casually mentioned, "We were thinking about how blessed we are to have such a successful daughter. Your father and I sacrificed so much to give you a good education." And here it was, the performance, the gentle touch, the reminder of their sacrifices, the setup for what was to come. "The mortgage payment has become quite a burden," my father said, his voice carrying that tone of authority he had always used to make me feel small. "With you doing so well in your software development." I corrected him automatically. Software development, not computer work. Right, he waved dismissively. "We thought perhaps you could help more with the monthly payments. After all, this is your family home too." The audacity was almost too much. "How much more do you need?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Just an extra $2,000 a month," my mother added quickly. "It's not much, considering your salary." I took another bite of lasagna. The irony of it all made my stomach turn. They had no idea that I had been paying more than $5,000 every month, covering their mortgage in full. "I'll think about it," I said, my voice steady. "But times are a bit uncertain right now." Sati. I excused myself from the table shortly after, needing a moment to regain my composure. I made my way down the hallway, pretending to head for the bathroom, but I took a small detour past my father's study. I could hear their voices faintly, low murmurs, deliberate and hushed, as they strategized their next move. I stopped at the door, my heart pounding as I strained to listen, every word sinking in with an icy chill. "She's not going to help." Thomas's voice was bitter. Did you see how she just sat there, acting all superior with her tech money while our business is struggling?" My mother's voice followed, dripping with disdain. "We should ask her for more money. She's single, with no kids. What else does she spend it on, after all we've done to raise her? She can't even properly support her family." A sickening knot formed in my stomach. These were the people I had tried to help, who I had sacrificed for. The same people who only saw me as a resource. My father added, "She owes us. She's had so many opportunities. What's another couple thousand?" Then my mother's voice lowered, now laced with the venomous suggestion that sent chills through me. "We have something on her, remember? Those investment documents I found in her cloud storage last month. We can remind her of that, make her see she has no choice." I froze. They had gone through my files that should have been private. My blood turned cold as I realized the depths of their manipulation. But what really struck me was their plan, how they had no qualms about using any means necessary, including blackmail. And here I was, preparing to put an end to it all. I stepped back from the door, not wanting them to hear me. I needed time to think, to process what they had just planned. But what really sank in was their final words. "If that doesn't work," Thomas added, "we can always reach out to her company's HR, make them question her stability, maybe suggest she's been stealing resources for personal projects. That'll get their attention." I quietly slipped away, heading back to the bathroom. I flushed the toilet for show, then rejoined them at the table. They all acted as though nothing had happened, as though their plan to manipulate me hadn't just been exposed. "Lindsay, dear," my mother greeted me sweetly, her voice now syrupy and full of fake warmth. "Have you given any thought to what we discussed about helping more with the mortgage?" I met her gaze steadily, my mind made up. "Actually, I have. You're right. Family should help family," I said, letting the words hang between us. "I'll have an answer for you in about 8 days. Thomas's eyes narrowed suspiciously. 8 days? Why such a specific timeline? I stood up, gathering my purse. Just need to check some things with my financial advisor. You understand, right? Being careful with money is just good business sense. I could feel the irony dripping from my words as I smiled at Thomas. The week dragged on slowly, each day a countdown, every conversation adding to the pressure. I could feel the weight of their manipulation at every corner, their constant guilt trips trying to break my resolve. It was a psychological game, but I wasn't going to play by their rules anymore. On the final day before the payment was due, I received another text from my mother. "Lindsay, we need your answer about the mortgage help. Times are tough, and family needs to stick together." I smiled to myself, already knowing what was coming. "Don't worry, Mom," I replied calmly. "Everything will be clear very soon." That night, I received an email from the family's bank. The payment had bounced. They were overdrawn. I forwarded the notification to Kate, my financial advisor. "Here we go," she responded. "Want me to start the proceedings tomorrow?" I smiled at her reply, feeling a sense of satisfaction rise within me. Let them sweat it out for now. I'll wait until the payment officially fails. Let them believe everything's fine for the next 2 days. The next morning, Divine Investments sent out its default notice exactly at 9 a.m. I knew it would take them 12 minutes before they called me. Sure enough, my phone rang, my mother's frantic voice filling the line. "Lindsay, something's wrong with our mortgage payment. The bank says we've defaulted. This can't be right. We need your help immediately." "Actually, Mom," I replied, my voice calm and steady. "Divine Investments isn't a bank. It's an LLC. My LLC, to be specific. The silence on the other end was deafening. "What? What do you mean?" she stammered. I took a slow breath. The moment finally arriving. "Check your email. You'll find a notice explaining that due to your default, Divine Investments is exercising its purchase option. The house is now legally mine. You're now month-to-month tenants." I paused, letting her absorb the shock. This is a joke," she protested weakly. "No joke," I said, my voice steady now. "I've been covering the majority of your mortgage for 4 years, while you mocked me behind my back. You called me a burden. You plotted to blackmail me, threatened my career. How did you not know I had everything documented?" A long pause followed. Then I heard my father's voice, low and full of anger. "You ungrateful," I cut him off. "Is that any way to talk to your landlord? The eviction notice is ready. Don't make me serve it sooner than planned." I ended the call and immediately blocked their numbers. I felt the weight of the decision settle in, but it was a decision I had made long ago. They had shown me exactly who they were, and now they would face the consequences. 3 months later, I stood in the empty house, the silence overwhelming. The echoes of my footsteps as I walked through the rooms were all that remained of the life I had once known. My family had been forced to move out last week. They had tried everything: threats, guilt trips, legal challenges, but nothing worked. The documents were ironclad, and they had no choice but to accept the reality of the situation. Thomas's attempt to contact my company's HR had backfired spectacularly. Thanks to my preemptive documentation and Uncle Jason's evidence, his accusations were dismissed immediately. In the end, it led to an ethics investigation that effectively ended his career. I could almost hear the desperation in his voice when he called me, but I didn't pick up. His life had fallen apart in the same way he had made mine feel every day for years. My mother's final attempt at manipulation came through a tear-filled voicemail. "How could you do this to your own family?" The answer was simple. They had shown me exactly what family meant to them, and I had finally believed them. As I walked through the kitchen, where it all started, I felt a strange sense of peace. Uncle Jason and his wife were coming over later to help me prepare the house for sale. The proceeds would go toward establishing a foundation for helping victims of financial abuse. Something good could finally come from all of this. I opened my phone to check my messages, seeing a notification from Kate. "Just heard from their lawyer. They're finally signing the last papers. It's really over." I smiled as I looked around at the empty house. It was over. My family had taught me one thing: that family always comes first. But they never specified which family. I chose myself. And for the first time in years, that felt exactly right. As the final papers were signed, I felt a wave of finality wash over me. The house was no longer theirs. The years of manipulation, the control they tried to exert, it was all over. I stood in the middle of the living room, looking at the empty space that had once been filled with the echoes of my family's voices. It no longer held the same significance. It wasn't a home anymore. It was just a house that had been the scene of my emotional imprisonment for years. I let out a long breath. Everything was about to change, for all of us. The sale of the property wasn't just about the money. It was about reclaiming my life, reclaiming my sense of worth. The irony of it all wasn't lost on me. My parents had always made me feel small, belittled me for the very career choices that had led me to success. They had no idea that the very thing they despised, the work they ridiculed, was what had empowered me to take control of my future. Now, they would be forced to live with the consequences of their actions, But I couldn't let that distract me. I had a bigger plan now. I wasn't going to keep the money for myself. Instead, I had decided that it was time to make sure that other women who had been stuck in similar situations, whether it was financial abuse, manipulation, or worse, would have a chance to rebuild their lives. The proceeds from the house sale would go to a foundation I'd created. It was a charitable cause that had been in the works for some time, but it felt more real now, more necessary. Every time I looked at the paperwork, every time I made another move, I felt like I was one step closer to the life I deserved, the life I had been denied for far too long. 2 months passed, and the foundation began to gain traction. I had started working with a small team, building relationships with other women who had escaped similar situations. The support was overwhelming, the stories heart-wrenching. Every success story felt like a personal victory. A reminder that I wasn't alone in my fight, and that I wasn't the only one who had been mistreated and manipulated. But even as I immersed myself in this new chapter of my life, my thoughts would occasionally drift back to my family. Despite everything, despite the betrayal, part of me still wanted to believe that they could change. Part of me wanted to believe that they would come to their senses, admit their wrongs, and make amends. But reality had set in. I'd learned the hard way that people don't change unless they truly want to. And they had made it clear they didn't want to. Not when it came to me. It was late one evening when I received another call from Uncle Jason. His voice sounded different this time, softer, almost apologetic. "Lindsay, I just wanted to check in. I know things have been rough with your family, but I wanted to let you know that I'm proud of you. You've done something that most people wouldn't have the courage to do." I smiled to myself, feeling a warmth I hadn't expected. My uncle had always been a source of support for me, even when my parents couldn't see what I was doing for them. He had witnessed firsthand how toxic the situation had become, and he had never judged me for the choices I made to protect myself. "Thanks, Uncle Jason," I replied, my voice steady. "I'm not doing this for recognition. I'm doing it because it's what I needed to do." He paused for a moment, and when he spoke again, there was a note of understanding in his voice. "I know. I just want you to know that I've got your back. You're not alone in this." I felt a sense of relief wash over me. For the first time in years, I felt truly supported. It wasn't long before I received another call, but this time it wasn't from Uncle Jason. It was from my mother. The caller ID flashed her name, and for a moment, I hesitated. I had blocked her number after everything that had happened, after all the lies, the manipulation. I had thought I was done with them. But curiosity got the better of me. "Lindsay!" Her voice crackled through the phone. It was softer, less forceful than I remembered, and there was an air of something different in her tone. Was it regret? I wanted to apologize. I wasn't sure how to respond. This was the woman who had used every opportunity to put me down, belittle my achievements, manipulate me into giving more and more. Was this real? Or was it just another attempt to worm her way back into my life? "Is this for real?" I finally said, my voice cold. "Are you actually apologizing? Or is this just another way for you to try and get money out of me?" Her silence told me everything I needed to know. "I don't need your apology," I continued, my voice gaining strength with each word. "What I need is for you to understand that I don't owe you anything. I've been your safety net for years, and it's over. You'll have to face the consequences of your actions now, just like everyone else." The line went silent, and I could feel the weight of the moment settling in. This was the final break. There would be no going back. The foundation continued to grow, as did my sense of fulfillment. I watched women whose lives had been changed by their own strength, women who were now reclaiming their power. Every day, I felt more and more like the person I was meant to be, the person I had always been before I was told I wasn't enough. And then, it happened. The breakthrough. One of the women we had helped, a single mother who had been living in an abusive financial situation for years, received a job offer, an offer that would allow her to finally leave her past behind and start anew. I couldn't help but smile. Sometimes, the best revenge wasn't about destroying someone else's life. It was about building your own, better than ever. As I sat there, reading her email, I realized something I had learned over the past few months. Life was full of choices. I had chosen to reclaim my power. I had chosen to turn my pain into something greater. And in the end, that was the most powerful thing I could have done. My phone buzzed again, and this time it was a message from Kate. She had news. The last bit of paperwork had been filed. My family was officially out of my life. And for the first time in years, I felt at peace. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had once been their prisoner, trapped by their demands, their expectations. But now, I was free. And I was stronger than ever before. And as I looked ahead, towards the future, I knew I had a choice. To continue building my legacy, to help more women like me, or to simply move on from the past and never look back. And as I closed my laptop and looked out at the city, I realized that I didn't need anyone else to define me anymore. It was my turn now. As I stood in my new office, looking out over the bustling city below, I couldn't help but feel a sense of immense gratitude. The past few months had been a whirlwind. The end of my toxic relationship with my family had been difficult, yes, but it had also been liberating. I had finally shed the weight of their expectations, their constant demands, and stepped into my own power. But I wasn't done yet. I thought back to Uncle Jason. He had always been there for me when no one else was. He had seen the truth when others refused to, had been the voice of reason when I had no one else to turn to. Without his support, I might have never been able to break free from the shackles that bound me. It was time for me to give back. I picked up my phone and dialed his number. It rang twice before he picked up. Lindsay! His voice was warm and familiar, and I could hear the slight chuckle in his tone. How are you, kid? I'm doing great, Uncle Jason, I replied, a smile tugging at my lips. Actually, I'm doing better than great. I've been thinking about everything, and I just wanted to let you know how much I appreciate everything you've done for me. You were right all along. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line, and I could practically hear him smiling. I'm just glad to see you standing tall, he said. You deserve everything that's coming your way. You always did. I don't think I would have gotten here without you, I said softly, and because of that, I want to do something special for you. I know I've told you I'm planning to give back, to help others who've been in situations like mine. But I want to do something just for you, something that shows you how much your support has meant to me. Lindsay, you don't have to do anything like that, he said, his voice a little hesitant. I just wanted to help. That's what family's for. I smiled, shaking my head even though he couldn't see me. No, Uncle Jason, you've done more than enough. I've made some changes recently, and I want to make sure you benefit from them too. I'm giving you a stake in the foundation. I want you to be a part of it, to help guide it, just like you've always guided me. I've been making plans, and it's all coming together now. You deserve to have a hand in this, in shaping it. The shock in his voice was palpable, and I could tell he was overwhelmed by the gesture. Lindsay, You don't have to do this. Really, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I'm just happy to see you thriving. That's enough for me. No, it's not enough, I said firmly. You've always been there when no one else was, and I need you by my side in this next phase of my life. I want to make sure you're as much a part of the foundation as I am. You're a vital piece of this, Uncle Jason. I could hear him sigh, and for the first time in a long while, I heard the genuine warmth in his voice. All right, kid, if you insist, I won't turn down the chance to help you help others. Good, I said, smiling to myself, because we're going to do a lot of good together. And this is just the beginning. As I hung up the phone, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I had finally reached a place in my life where I could give back to those who had helped me along the way. This was my chance to pay it forward. And it wasn't just about money or power. It was about creating something meaningful, something that would outlast all the negativity from my past. The foundation was growing, my life was flourishing, and I was stronger than ever. I had learned the importance of trusting the right people, of standing up for myself, and of never letting anyone define my worth. And as I looked forward to the future, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. I had come a long way, and I was just getting started. So what do you think, everyone? Is it time for the character to turn the page and begin a new chapter? Or should she have kept it all in her past? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Lindsay made the right call in taking control of her future? Or was it too much, too soon? Share your thoughts below.